Most people fail to sustain change because they're too focused on the actions they're taking rather than shifting their identity. If you want true permanent change, you have to stop focusing on what's being done and start focusing on the person doing. From my perspective, my life continues to get better every single year. Every single year comes with greater degrees of opportunity, optionality, and prosperity. My relationships are better, my business opportunities are better, my defined metrics of success are better. Everything continues to scale and elevate upward, and I feel grateful and blessed to be able to say that. But lately, I've been thinking a lot more about not what I'm doing to facilitate that continuous increase in quality of life, but who I'm being that naturally results in the actions that are taken to facilitate that improved quality of life. Because think about it. If you could live from the state that was most conducive to the actions you know you need to take for your continued success, whether it's in business, whether it's in health, whether it's in relationships, then those actions would happen naturally and without really any effort. It would just be the natural consequence of who you're being and the state that you're occupying. And so if you can shift your identity into a conducive state that is a natural cause for the actions you take, which are the effect of that cause, then you don't need to rely on willpower or motivation or even discipline, because you're just doing what is natural for who you're being. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. We can't occupy an ideal, perfect state at all times. Things like discipline and willpower and motivation are going to continuously be a requirement. But when you start thinking more about the state that you're occupying, the identity that you're living from, that the life you want naturally results from, that will allow you the ability to take those actions much more easily and with much greater degrees of efficiency. And so in today's video, you and I are going to work together to clarify your ideal identity, the best possible version of yourself, and what you need to both add and subtract in order to grow closer to that ideal. And to facilitate that, we're going to answer 15 questions across 5 categories: your past self, your present self, your future self, your shadow self, and your values and beliefs. All right, category 1, past self. This is who you've been. These are the past experiences that have led you up to the present moment. All right, question 1. What negative experiences have most impacted you? Now, this is going to be tough for many of you watching, right? Because there are likely, for some of you, certain experiences that you've had that you don't like to reflect on or that you don't like to think about because they were negative, right? It's associated with pain and it's associated with displeasure. But you have to reflect on these things because they influenced who you are today. They influenced how you live today and how you move through the world today. And so if you can face the hurt that you've experienced, you can begin to internalize, integrate, and accept it in a way that allows you to learn the hard lessons that come from it, even if the pain you experienced wasn't your fault. How do your negative experiences influence the way you think and feel today? And how can you approach coming to terms with these experiences from a place of acceptance, compassion, and courage? All right, question 2. What positive experiences have most impacted you? Now, this is obviously going to be much easier to reflect on, right? Because these experiences are associated with joy, with pleasure, with fondness and happiness. You look back on these memories and they make you feel good, right? You want to understand how these memories, these experiences have influenced you in a positive way, in a beneficial way, right? Because there are lessons to learn here as well, even if they aren't difficult lessons. What common threads are found within each of your most cherished memories and experiences? How does the fondness, happiness, and enjoyment they provided you in the past translate to the fondness, happiness, and enjoyment you experience in the present? And then question 3, What did you learn from your experiences? Now, these are the distilled lessons from all experiences, both negative, positive, and even neutral, right? If you have some prevalent memories or experiences that you've had that it impacted you, but are more neutrally oriented, which is likely not the case. Usually the experiences that most impact us are either very negatively charged or very positively charged, but I digress. If there's something that you're a little bit more neutral about, but you feel it's worth, outlining or clarifying, your discretion, feel free to do so. But you want to try to distill, upon reflecting on these experiences, the lessons that you've learned and what they had to teach you. Alternatively, and additionally, use this as an opportunity to become aware of those lessons, right? Try to connect the way in which your experiences, both positive and negative from your past, influence the way you move in the world today. How you react or respond to stimulus, right? How you make decisions or choices, your ability to be decisive or indecisive, your ability to be courageous or your proclivity for cowardice, right? Try to connect the ways in which you show up in the world and the ways in which you navigate your life to the past experiences you've had that naturally have influenced who you are in the present, because that is the way that you'll be able to overcome that which currently holds you back as the result of past experiences and cultivate that which currently benefits you as the result of past experiences. So think about how your past experiences have influenced, changed, or defined you. How did they influence your perception of self, others, or the world around you? And how have they held you back or propelled you forward? All right, next category, present self. So this is who you currently are, okay? Question 4, what is your self-talk like? What is your internal dialogue like? Are you a friend to yourself? Are you your greatest ally? Are you an enemy to yourself? Are you your greatest foe? How do you speak to yourself when life gets difficult or when you make mistakes? How do you speak to yourself when life is going well and you have victories, right? Do you acknowledge those and say, well done, good job? Or do you say it was a matter of luck? You discredit your own involvement in those victories. Or when it comes to your losses and mistakes, do you beat yourself up and say, you're such an idiot, or you're such a fool, or I can't believe XYZ, right? Or do you accept, like, hey, listen, it's okay, these things happen, you're just human, etc., right? The way you speak to yourself is infinitely more important than what you hear from others. What is your relationship like with the voice inside your head? How do you use language to communicate with yourself? How do you speak to yourself when you fail? And how do you speak to yourself when you succeed? Question 5, what is your behavior like? So this is the way you move through the world. These are the actions that you take physically throughout your environment, right? And so these are the perpetual things that you're doing on a consistent basis, the actions you're taking and the way you're behaving that influence the results that you experience within the world, right? Because it's the internal forces, mental, emotional, spiritual, that translate through the physical in order to create change or consistency in your external reality. You can't control everything that happens to you, right? You can't control every which way that life unfolds, but you can always control and direct the way in which you interact with your life and the world. And you can do certain things, and as a result of doing those things, expect certain outcomes. And so these are your mannerisms, habits, and rituals. How do you walk and carry yourself through your space? Do your movements communicate self-doubt and anxiety, or self-assurance and confidence? What bad habits do you regularly engage in, and how do they influence your character? What good habits do you regularly engage in, and how do they influence your character? What rituals, if any, do you commit to on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, and do they hinder or help you? Question 6, what is your self-image like? So this is similar to self-talk, but it's different, and so we need distinction. Self-talk is the way in which you linguistically communicate with yourself. It's what you say to yourself, whereas self-image is how you see yourself. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself. It's the persona that you perceive when you look at yourself in the mirror, right? Do you see someone who's strong, or do you see someone who's weak? Do you see someone who's confident, or do you see someone who's insecure? Do you see someone who accepts the faults that they perceive, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, internally, just as much as externally? Or are you someone who hyperfixates on those faults and imperfections and struggles to accept their presence? If you were the protagonist in a story you were following, what would you think about yourself as the main character? Do you look at yourself and see more positive qualities than negative, or more negative qualities than positives? What are the qualities you see, and how do they influence your daily life? All right, category 3, your future self. Now, this is who you hope and aspire to be. Question 7, how does your ideal self think and feel about themselves? So this is going to be a little bit difficult because you have to remove yourself from your own current perceptions of inadequacy, right? You have to try to step away from the way you currently perceive yourself and try to step into the way your ideal future self thinks about and perceives themselves. So strip away all of the aspects of your current self that you perceive to be negative or detrimental, or that you're aspiring to change. Imagine a version of yourself who has overcome those perceived limitations, and try to occupy that person and how they see themselves, or rather how they think and feel about themselves, right? Their self-talk. If you were to strip away all of the limiting beliefs, criticisms, and perceived shortcomings you currently think and feel you have, what would be left? What would they be replaced with? What is the internal space of your most confident, most capable, most self-assured version of self-like? How do they respond to blessings and victories? How do they respond to challenges and failures? All right, question 8. How does your ideal self think and feel about the world? Remember, the way in which you perceive the external world is a reflection of the way in which you perceive your internal world, right? The way in which you believe and think in regards to yourself is what influences and colors the way in which you think and perceive the world. And so the negative influences internally, the hang-ups, the insecurities, the perceived limitations that you have internally are going to naturally bleed out into how you think and view the world, right? And so naturally, as you begin to shift your identity to a more positive, lighter, beneficial state, that's going to gradually shift and change the relationship you have with your perception of the world. How does your external world and reality shift when seen through the eyes of your ideal self? What can you see in the form of opportunity, optionality, and possibility that you currently don't see, struggle to see, or wish you could see more of? How is the color and vibrancy of each day amplified beyond what you currently experience? Question 9. How did your ideal self come to be? So this is a practice in reverse engineering. Okay, so place yourself in the future and you have become what you currently perceive as the most ideal version of yourself. Yes, you will still have challenges. Yes, you will still have problems, but you are so much further than you are now. You have evolved significantly from where you are today. What led you to that, right? Think backwards from that perceived ideal future to your present moment. Think about the decisions that you've taken, the actions you've taken, the commitments you've made, the external experiences you've had, the people you've met, the influences on you. Whatever you feel, even if it's general broad strokes, as far as like relationships or experiences that you could have had or may have in the future that will influence you beneficially and bring you into closer alignment with that ideal self, paint that picture, because that's going to subconsciously communicate that you want to find your way to those actions, those decisions, those experiences, and those influences. What experiences have helped you build competence, confidence, and a sense of alignment with your highest good and greatest benefit? What deep inner work have you had to commit to, and how is it facilitated? What commitments, risks, and/or leaps of faith have you made that helped get you to where you are as who you are when you're living as your ideal future self? All right, category 4, shadow self. This is the darkness within you. And question 10. What part of yourself do you perceive as toxic or weak? Now, you will hear from others that you need to be positive all the time. You need to always focus on the best parts of yourself, the most beneficial aspects of yourself. And yes, that's important, but it's also naive. We all have perceived weakness. We all think about aspects of ourselves as toxic. And so we need to face those as they exist currently within us so that we can integrate them, accept them, and learn to move and grow beyond them. It isn't a matter of slaying your demons. It's a matter of learning to live above them. Not trying to force them out, but learning to live from a state where they can't reach you in the first place. And so how have you used your mind and heart to hurt yourself and others? How have you reacted or lashed out in ways you didn't mean to or wish you could take back? Where do you think these parts of yourself come from, and why do you think they hold space within and power over you? How can you come to terms with these parts of yourself and release them? All right, question 11. In what ways do you feel you are not enough? This is facing your inadequacies, the ways in which you feel you fall short. And we all think and feel we fall short. Even the people you aspire to be like, the people you consider heroes, the people you see as like the pinnacle of success or fulfillment, however you define it, they feel inadequacy and like they fall short. They think and feel to themselves, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing enough, or, my results aren't what I want them to be, and that's my fault. But the difference between those who win and those who lose is the act of surrender, right? There are people who are crushed by the weight of their own perceived inadequacy, thinking that if they were destined for success, that inadequacy wouldn't exist in them in the first place. Whereas the people who succeed, they recognize that inadequacy, that sense, is a part of being human, and they just don't allow it to defeat them, right? They rise to the challenge of facing and overcoming it every time it appears. And that is what makes them winners. That is what makes them successful. And so in what ways have you thought or felt you were unworthy of what you want for yourself and your life? What ways do you think and feel you are undeserving, not enough, or simply do not have what it takes? Where do you think these parts of yourself come from, and why do you think they hold space within and power over you? How can you come to terms with these parts of yourself and release them? All right, so let's move on to question 12. What vices do you entertain that poison your mind, body, and or soul? Now, these are the low-quality behaviors, habits, vices, addictions that keep you stuck in a suboptimal state of being. And these are some of the hardest to release, right? Because oftentimes those are our coping mechanisms. It's those addictions or those actions, those behaviors, those vices that allow us an easy way to self-sabotage. They keep us in a state of familiarity with that suboptimal version of self because that's what's comfortable for us, even if it's not what's best for us. And when we're seeking to change on a fundamental level, i.e. on an identity level, that's hard, difficult, uncomfortable, unfamiliar work. And so we as humans will find small ways in which to self-sabotage that work, even if it's in our benefit. And it's becoming aware of these actions, these habits, these vices, these addictions that allow us to consciously disrupt the impulse to engage them. And so what do you use to escape from yourself and your life? What unhealthy coping mechanisms have you developed and allow yourself to indulge in, even if they make you feel worse about yourself after the fact? Where do you think these parts of yourself come from, and why do you think they hold space within and power over you? How can you come to terms with these parts of yourself and release them? All right, category 5, values and beliefs. So this is what you stand for. It's how you externally represent yourself to and in the world, okay? Question 13, what do you value? This is what matters to you. This is what's important for you to cultivate within yourself as far as virtues are concerned. Things like patience, strength, caring for others, the ability to provide guidance for others, the ability to be self-sufficient and sovereign, right? These are all of the virtues that you feel are valuable to hold within your sense of identity. And so what high concept qualities, characteristics, and archetypes do you think and feel you should live in alignment with? How do you think and feel you do at holding and expressing these values and virtues on a daily basis? And how could you do so on an even deeper level? All right, question 14. What do you believe in? And so this is what's sacred to you. This is your sense of higher power or external force. You can call it God, you can call it spirit, you can call it source, you can call it nature, whatever you choose to assign to it. And it isn't just that which is greater than you, it's what you consider sacred in regards to what you do or don't do, who you are or who you're not, what you give your energy to and what you withhold it from, right? It is the most quintessential aspects of who you are and how you perceive the world, right? Because everything is predicated on what you believe to be true or not true, what you believe to be sacred or not sacred, what you believe to be significant or insignificant. So what beliefs do you hold that allow you to live a better life as a better person? How do they contribute to enriching your self-perception and giving color and vibrancy to your life? What kind of higher power do you have a relationship with, and how does that relationship uplift you and give you a deeper sense of meaning and connectedness to your own spiritual center? And finally, question 15, what do you embody? So this is what you exude. This is how you show up in your life on a day-to-day basis. It's what you communicate in your energy, in your language, in your action and behavior. So this is more relational to others, right? Or external circumstances or experiences. But it is important to define because it is tied directly to identity, right? It is the embodiment of certain aspects and ways of being that influence the way you interact with the world, environments, and other people. And so what do you want to communicate when it comes to the energy you give off? What qualities do you want to express through the ways you think, feel, and behave? Why is it important for you to express and display these attributes for both yourself and others? And so if you moved through, answered, and worked with these questions sincerely and to the best of your ability, you should now have a much clearer idea of your ideal sense of self. And additionally, a much clearer idea of who you've been, who you are, and what you need to further integrate and what you need to change in order to step into that highest version of yourself, that most ideal version of yourself, right? Greater degrees of awareness in regards to what you feel you need to add, what you feel you need to subtract, and what you feel you need to transform and transmute in order to live in closer alignment with your ideal identity. Remember, your identity is the architecture of your ideal self. It's the projection of what you consider to be the best possible version of you. It's the you that creates your dream life as a natural consequence of who and how they are. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video benefited you, and I will see you in the next one.